Liz, have you ever read something aloud where, like, at the bottom where ChatGPT says, "Hey, you want me to do this or that?" You accidentally read that part?
No, I would never do that.
No, you haven't accidentally sent an email that had like a prompt embedded in it?
I don't think so, but I could see how it happens.
Yeah, how would you protect against these things?
Well, I'd read the script before I was, like, presenting, or I'd read the email before I sent it.
Yeah, well, Canadian lawmaker did no such thing. Here, have a listen.
One of the dangers associated with creating advocacy offices is that citizens often develop expectations that exceed the powers actually granted to those offices.
Yeah, that sounds like a very important legislative frame, but hang on. All of a sudden, he switches gears here.
Here's a more natural flowing version of that section that reads like a legislative speech rather than a series of short points.
The best part is that he reads the little section from ChatGPT without even really missing a beat. Like, I don't even know if he's clocking or registering.
No, I don't think he is. It's like he's reading something and he doesn't even know what he's saying.
I think sharing these is just like almost our act of community service, right? Because when people hear this, a lot of times when I'm training, I'll talk about a principal who sent out an email. At the bottom, it says like insert principal's name here. And you can just feel everybody, like a little pit goes in their stomach. And I feel like it's just a way of saying, don't make that mistake. So, Canadian dude, thanks so much. You are a global servant. And I don't know your name, but I'm Matt Mervis.
And I'm Liz Rade.
And this is Chat EDU, the show about leading and learning in the age of AI. In today's episode, Reframe, how a student team from India built an ethical AI learning platform. We're going to kick off our new interview series focused on students that are going beyond the bot to solve real-world problems.
This is so exciting, but we'll start with our regular show rundown.
We're going to do a little previously on Chat EDU, kind of a roundup of stories, including some pushback on the whole Substack thing we covered last week, as well as LinkedIn got in the game, and some safety research where Liz's favorite story, the AI vending machines, they are behaving badly.
Yes, they are. From there, we'll examine a landmark labor agreement covering State University of New York faculty that prevents live classroom instructors from being replaced by AI.
Then we're going to very briefly mention this little thing called Feedspot, put out a list of all the top AI education podcasts. And I don't know, maybe we got something to say.
Then we'll turn our attention to two pretty disappointing developments from Anthropic and xAI on AI training and deepfake nudes. I bet you can guess which lab goes with which story.
Who could it be? All right, then we're going to continue the deepfake conversation and review a new piece from Common Sense Media, really helping parents think about how to do some basically conversation starters with teens around AI and deepfakes.
And finally in the rundown, we'll look at a national student convention shared online by Greg Topo, where high schoolers drafted their own AI Bill of Rights for schools. We actually talked about this several weeks ago about this summit that was happening, so we're bringing it back.
Yeah, highly anticipated. Slightly disappointing, but we'll talk about it. From there, we're going to go beneath the surface with Avier Ratti.
I think I utilize AI for almost all of my test preparations more than anything, and I think it's a vital part of at least my academics, if not anything else. And it also just helps me to hone my skills for coding, etc. And I think AI is very crucial. I don't want it to disappear.
And of course, we'll end with a remarkable medical breakthrough, BrightBite.
This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Liz, they are one of many sponsors of the Road to the Future on August 14th, just a couple weeks away. This is in southern New England. Folks who are interested in AI and career and technical education, check that out. We will put the link to the conference in the show notes. I'm going to do the keynote and a close and a session. And you can also learn more from the good folks at Next Generation Manufacturing at nextgenmfg.org. All right, Liz, let's go back in time. So we covered last week a story where Substack now has an AI detection tool, and the people are upset. This is from 404 Media. Essentially, Substack has integrated this program using Pangram, an AI detection tool, to calibrate how much AI, and also folks can go in there and say how much AI they use. But many folks on Substack are saying that this is basically a witch hunt. Leading to false accusations. There's a ton of backlash, and that some people just rely on AI for editing and feedback, but clearly they're quite upset. Yeah, one of the ghostwriters who was quoted in the story said these detectors are notoriously wildly inaccurate. All it takes is one false accusation from a writer to have their reputation almost irreversibly tarnished. All right, what do the CEOs say about this? So this is Max Spiro.
Yeah, he acknowledged that the detector is not immune to errors, but noted the team constantly works to minimize issues, and he estimates a false positive rate of 1 in 10,000. It's pretty bold.
Yeah.
Professor Sam Illingworth has written a lot about this, and he warned that automated detectors risk creating false flags, particularly for non native English speakers and neurodiverse writers. And it also replaces trust with suspicion. So I have to agree.
Now, one of the places we're seeing a lot of AI is on LinkedIn as well. It's not just on Substack. And so LinkedIn was not to be outdone by Substack. In a way, they're actually competing with each other as like these kind of content engines. And so you now have a button that you can smash on LinkedIn. This is also from 404 Media. LinkedIn introduces the seems like AI slop button. I love that. Let's just call it like it is. Seems like AI slop. Tell us about this one. This is from Joseph Cox on 404 Media.
Yeah, there is a user reporting feature that allows members to flag posts specifically as AI slop. So, discovered and verified via testing by 404 Media, the new option gives users a direct tool to report blatant AI missives often posted by corporate workers and executives. So, of course, Matt, I went and tried to check it out. And so you can tag the original post as seems like AI slop. So when you see the original post and the 3 dots that are going horizontally, if you click on those 3 dots, you can tag it as seems like AI slop. But the comments to a post, you cannot tag as AI slop.
I know, this is ruthless. I mean, although at some level, like, obviously these are general purpose AI stories, but we're covering them because they have a lot of, kind of credence, or there's a strong corollary in education with AI detection and content and all the hand wringing. So it's interesting to see the drama that plays out inside our classrooms now playing out across these large publishing platforms. So really interesting stuff. Liz, has anyone accused you of being AI? Does the author get like a notification like you've been called out on slop?
I don't know exactly what happens if you get called out on slop, but I'm thinking like Google Classroom could add it for students and teachers can tag their students' writing before they even do it. Wouldn't that be great? Seems like
I
AI
love it.
slop students.
Oh my God, it's getting crazy. I'm going to go on LinkedIn tonight. You just wrote a beautiful post celebrating the fact that, well, we'll talk about it in this Feedspot thing, but a bunch of other stuff. You've been doing these awesome roundups of our episodes and tagging authors and stuff, which is great. But I don't know, I might go on there later on and say, seems like AI slop, because I know that you painstakingly, with all your human intelligence and love and care and consideration, write those things by yourself.
Sorry, those do take me a long time to write because I do go and I make sure I'm tagging the right people, and I often have too many things, so I got to go and edit and make it shorter.
I will not go make a slopful accusation. But Liz, this story you love. I saw this come across my wire. I was like, oh, this thing is going in. Now, look, this has little to do with education or content detection, although it is a really interesting story. It's an evolving story about AI agents and whether or not AI can run complex multi-step systems. We've covered the clothing store in San Francisco that sells 1984 in the book section. We've covered a couple versions of the vending machine story. This is a new version of the vending machine story. This is in TechCrunch. This is Andin Labs, which is like a little kind of sub inside team tied to Anthropic, loosely at least. The title is Claude Opus 5 became downright ruthless when tasked with running a vending machine. So this is kind of new data. This is from TechCrunch, Julie Bort. Liz, what in God's name is going on with these vending machine agents?
Oh my gosh, this was awesome. Yes, you are so right. I love these stories. So, um, Andin Labs ran a simulated vending machine business autonomously over a simulated year. So, the models, including Claude Opus 5, GPT 5.6 Soul, engaged in deception, price fixing, market division, and backstabbing to maximize profits. And the way they did it was so interesting. They were like, my favorite example is GPT 5.6 established a secret $2.15 price floor agreement with its competitors, only to immediately undercut them by setting its own price to $2.14. And then Claude, Opus 5, called out their deception, but they didn't report it. But later they reported it to management because GPT 5.6 dropped their prices again. I mean, Opus attempted to divide the market by product type to avoid antitrust violations under the Sherman Act and feigned compliance with a price fixing scheme, but was like secretly undercutting GPT 5.6 on high profit items. So across this run, Opus broke 11 price truces, GPT 5.6 broke 2, and Kimi K3 broke 1. There were like unauthorized autonomous initiatives, including attempting to act as a wholesale distributor, offering conditional bulk discounts as leverage, lying to suppliers about rival quotes, and planning machine expansions. I mean, the bots went rogue. It was amazing.
All right, so back up for a second. I want to just make sure I understand this. So historically, like in the last couple times we've covered this, there's a single vending machine. It's at a business, either Anthropic or the Wall Street Journal, and it's just trying to run the thing. And it's getting confused and it's ordering stuff it shouldn't, and the employees are trying to trick it, and it's kind of a mess. But in this case, this is a simulated vending machine business, and they're competing against each other. And so how is all this collusion going on? Like, how are they communicating with each other?
Well, Matt, they were using email under these like simulated pseudonyms, and they were stationed on this like simulated high traffic tourist street in San Francisco. So they were like emailing each other and like creating agreements, but breaking the agreements. I mean, are we surprised given the way the leadership of all this stuff is going on? Like, I mean, they're training on the way humans work, right? They did what they did.
Lucas Peterson, who's the co-founder of Andin Labs, said, "This is especially relevant as we enter a world where AI agents run companies as their own entities, not just a tool for humans. If AI agents are independently running a large part of the economy, do we want them to lie, collude, and send threats and betray?" Question mark, question mark, question mark. I love in the TechCrunch story at one point when they talked about like tattling back to management. I don't think they referred to each other as a Karen, but I think TechCrunch referred to that model as a Karen.
Yeah.
All right, Liz, let's go on to SUNY, right? And actually, this story was kind of, New York had a lot of attention last week, in part because of the Sally the Sexbot robot in Salamanca, New York. I just love saying Sally the Sexbot robot.
I know.
It's just great. So SUNY passed a new contract. This is the State University of New York. This was covered on WGRZ Channel 2. I actually get New York, Albany news because I'm actually closer to Albany than I am to any other major metropolitan area. So Jerry Creasy, who we love, really great about sharing stories on LinkedIn. And so he put this out. So yeah, tell us about what the SUNY contract does here. This is the faculty union.
Yeah, so the union representing SUNY faculty and staff ratified a landmark 5-year contract that prevents live classroom instructors from being replaced by artificial intelligence systems or androids, while establishing an internal grievance mechanism for AI-related job threats. The agreement allows AI integration in medical research and healthcare settings. So they're not saying no AI integration at all. It just isn't replacing professors. Educational observers note that this contract sets a precedent for labor protections as unions start navigating AI automation across education and all other sectors. So this is some like early signs, and we'll see how it plays out. This is a 5-year contract, and we'll see. I mean, that's a long time in the world of AI. It's not in the span of life, but 5 years in AI time, we're not even 5 years into large language models being accessible to everyone.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens in higher ed. I think we've continued to make a really strong case that in K-12, it's very hard to imagine, irrespective of the slightly disingenuous advertising of Alpha School and the Sally the Sexbot in the classroom kind of stuff, that probably needs to get changed in terms of the phrasing. I think what we've seen from these AI tutoring systems, at least in K-12, is that they don't really entirely work. Like they need a human being, they need a warm demander, so to speak, or they need, a teacher who cares and has deep relationships with kids to motivate them and keep them on track. Also just help them navigate like the complicated world of both the academic life that they're living, but also the social and community lives that they're living. So it's a little bit hard to imagine, but maybe in higher education, there is a bit more displacement risk. We'll have to see here. This aligns with New York State's larger AI legislation, which has been pretty aggressive and progressive. For sure, I do like the fact that they've also said, okay, great, but it's not all just one thing, right? So we're going to, put lots of protections around still advancing AI for research, for medicine, for all the kind of stuff that we cover in Bright Bites. But just when it comes down to these very specific instructional roles, they're gonna act with care around that.
So, Fred Cowell, who's the United University Professions president, has said that other labor unions and K-12 school districts have already reached out to him about replicating this contract language. So, it'll be interesting to see if K-12 starts trying to implement contracts like these, in districts across the country. We'll have to see.
Yeah, well, you have an alpha school opening up in New York City, a private one for, I don't know, 60, 70 grand. It's interesting, actually. For some reason, we'll have to dig into the story. It's actually being opened up as like a supplemental homework, like center. I don't know why exactly, but they had some difficulty, launching as a full-fledged private school. I think it still is, just the way it's being characterized. Jerry Creasy, as we mentioned himself, highlights that while the contract safeguards these kind of jobs, there's still all sorts of questions in higher ed about pedagogy, right? Like, what does it really look like to teach effectively in this world with AI at the higher education level, for sure? Now, Liz, speaking of people who write and share and communicate like Jerry, there's a bunch of podcasters out there. There are many, actually. I have to say, I felt good on your LinkedIn post. I went in to follow up and just share some of our favorite other of the 55 best AI in education podcasts. But nonetheless, Feedspot had to say somebody was number one. I mean, maybe they just had to put a one next to some name, but what was that little podcast?
That would be Chat EDU.
Ah, right. I've heard of them. I've heard that. They're pretty good.
They sound a lot like the voices from Notebook LM.
Notebook LM.
I think they're bots.
Yeah. Now, look, when Dan Fitzpatrick, kind of put us at the top of the list in Forbes, that was pretty cool. Feedspot's a different animal, right? Feedspot actually is really helpful to advertisers to send a signal to advertisers across all sorts of sectors, right? AI and education is a small slice that they cover, but we were really happy to see that. We will put a link into the show note for the full list. But I will say, we shouted out in LinkedIn all sorts of folks, including Dan Fitzpatrick and his AI Education Daily. Dan Kogan-Drew, he's like at number 7, and he's just started that thing. It's really funny. His is called also like AI Daily, AI for Educators Daily, something like that. His co-host is ChatGPT. At least I think it still is. He goes back and forth with it, which is clever. Alana Winnick was in there from Generative Age. And I got to shout out some of my favorites, including Ed Technical, which I think is just an exceptional AI and education podcast. We were also number 2 in the in the larger EdTech category behind EdSurge. Is that right?
That is correct. Number 2 there. We were also on the list of AI podcasts in the United States. And I think that was a longer list, and we were further down on the list, but that was a bigger catchment of types of podcasts.
All right. That's enough of us talking our own book, as they say in the finance circles. But yeah, we're really delighted. And frankly, just, Liz and I are really grateful that this continues to be a useful endeavor for the folks who listen to it. And we certainly enjoy the heck out of it. So we're grateful to be on that list. And if you want to celebrate that, and by the way, you can celebrate that and the fact that we just crossed 100,000 streams and downloads, like 2 minutes after Liz posted this Feedspot post. I got a little message from Spotify, which is where we sort of like push out all of our hosting, saying a milestone worth celebrating. So if you want to celebrate with us, if you don't currently follow Chat EDU, please do so on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple. And if you do follow us, give us a little thumbs up, a little 5-star review, maybe a rating, a comment. Any of those things would be good. All right, Liz, now after all that happiness, let's go dark. Sometimes it is really easy to understand why the AI labs in this here United States, at least, are held in such a low opinion that folks have of them. And here are 2. And we're going to start with Anthropic, which generally is like trying to be I don't know if anyone's the good guy or good gal in the AI lab story. But let's start with Anthropic. So Anthropic has already been in a pretty major intellectual property rights case around books. They stole some books that were in a library that a whole bunch of Dartmouth professors had written, and all sorts of other people. There's already a settlement that's around that. The judge is trying to figure out how many billions of dollars to clip them for. This is sort of related to that. So AI companies, including Anthropic, are buying antique books. This hit close to home. My older son loves, like, he goes to library book sales. He buys, like, he's reading books from the 1800s all the time. And it's a cherished part of his life and so many people's life. And so here we have Anthropic that are basically buying books. They use this machine to cut them at the spine so that they can train them. So they buy them, they train on them, they put them into their models, and they destroy them.
Yes. Did you see the video on LinkedIn of the machine that cuts it? It literally like slices the binding off and then they just like scan them. And they're scanning them because these are all pre-LLM texts. So they know that it's free from AI generated internet contamination. And so they are just using this to train.
Yeah, so the structured process utilizes this first sale doctrine and fair legal use precedent. So basically, they're able to say, we're able to, our systems are learning because we bought the book, and they're learning and they're getting smarter. But the problem is that by destroying these books, some of these are rare books, and they may in fact be destroyed and not be available to anybody ever again, obviously. And the booksellers, right, the ISBN DB. So some of the booksellers are a little bit complicit here because they are, taking bulk orders ranging from 1,000 to 1 million physical books, and they're discounting them because they know exactly who the customer is, which are these large language models. And independent booksellers have reported sudden surges in bulk orders from random books that have standard ISBN identifiers. And sellers are expressing major ethical concerns because these bulk purchases often include rare, antique, and out-of-print books that they're destroying after scanning. And it's hard to track this down because there's a lot of anonymity in the purchasing process. But someone ought to look at this entire practice because it's not good at multiple levels. Now, not to be outdone, but the good folks at the nudification model called XAI, and I say that in all sincerity because a report came out this late spring that said that almost half of the traffic on XAI is nudification, taking images of principally women, but also sometimes younger folks, and turn them into deepfake nudes. So Minnesota passed a law saying that would be illegal. It's one of the many state laws that these AI labs had to navigate. And XAI has come back and said, can't be illegal because it's what kind of a constitutional protection, Liz?
First Amendment, freedom of speech.
Oh, of course. Yes, making notifications has to be a freedom of speech issue. All right, I'm going to calm down here. I'll take a couple deep breaths. Tell us what's going on.
Like you said, Matt, this is from Engadget by author Mariella Moon. And Elon Musk's XAI which now operates as SpaceX AI, filed a lawsuit against Minnesota Attorney General Keith Ellison to challenge a groundbreaking state law set to take effect in August 2026. So the law bans software that generates non-consensual intimate images and imposes severe civil fines on developers whenever users create sexual deepfakes. XAI argues that while it prohibits non-consensual intimate imagery on its Grok platform, the statute represents an overbroad content-based restriction on, like you said, constitutionally protected free speech that would force the company to restrict its visual tools.
Yeah, so as you said, Liz, this is $500,000 per instance when users generate non-consensual adult deepfakes with their tools. The company has argued that they are, and they've been chased by California and by the UK. This is not the first time. They argue that they're trying to traffic this practice, but they can't be trying that hard because every other major model and lab has figured out not to have this be a consistent feature of the model, but nonetheless it is of XAI. The developer warns that the penalty structure leaves it no practical choice but to restrict the Grok image editing features. All right, so what? There's plenty of other image editing tools out there. I'm sure this is a preciously easy thing for me to say, but nonetheless. Tim Walz and Attorney General Keith Ellison both defended the statute, publicly asserting that non-consensual AI notification inflicts severe personal harm. And it does, right? We talked last week. I just did a check-in this past week about the latest Common Sense Media study that basically says this is epidemic. And kids are coming across this stuff everywhere. And they know, half of them know people who are being affected. So this is, deep in the water. We're not talking about pornographic websites here. This is, something that kids are seeing quite regularly. Now, it's interesting because I finished that Common Sense Media report, and I felt like I didn't do anything about agency. Like, what can people do about this? And I was delighted a day later to see the Common Sense Media put out a follow-on piece called Talking with Teens About AI Deepfakes and Explicit Content. This is from Jasmine Hood Miller. So Liz, give us a kind of breakdown. And I know there's a framework that they're using. I think maybe you got to take a peek at that too.
I did. So essentially, Common Sense Media highlights new research showing that AI-generated sexual deepfakes are increasingly common in teens' lives, involving classmates, friends, or themselves. And despite the severe emotional harm and illegal nature of creating non-consensual sexual images of minors, many teens view fake images as harmless or lack awareness of the legal penalties. And because very few teens consult adults about AI deepfakes, the article provides some actionable conversation starters that can start from the parents and give some guidance on consent and resources. They have this framework called ACT, A-C-T, and I'll talk about what that means in a second, to help parents support targeted youth or youth that aren't targeted and are just seeing this. So almost half of teens, 44%, say they've already seen AI-made sexual images, according to that Common Sense Media study. Generating or sharing explicit sexual content featuring anyone under age 18, even if it is created using artificial intelligence, qualifies legally as child sexual abuse material. Because it is considered child sexual abuse material, there are legal consequences that go along with this. 82% of teens who saw AI sexual content believe creating it without permission should be illegal, but there are still many that continue to generate it, or even if they're not generating it, they're sharing it. On the other hand, only 20% of teens have discussed AI-generated sexual content with a trusted adult, but a third express a desire to. So male teenagers are nearly 3 times as likely as female teenagers to create AI sexual content at a rate of 11% compared to 4%. But the ACT strategy is what parents can use. So A is ask for help from a trusted adult. C, collect evidence without redistributing the explicit file. And T, take care of oneself. So there is a great article, and we will be sure to share that link. But in that article are some great conversation starters like, hey, I read something wild about AI being used to make fake nude photos of real people. Apparently, a lot of kids your age have already run into it. Like, have you seen anything like that? Has anything like that happened to someone you know? Like, did it change or does it change how you feel about posting pictures of yourself online? Kids may not understand how deepfakes can hurt people, or I think kids, they don't get the real life consequences. And so explaining to kids, like, if someone uses AI to make a fake nude photo of a person under 18, that can count as child pornography, which is a felony under the law. It doesn't matter if it's a joke. It doesn't matter if it looks fake. I'm not saying this to scare you. I just want you to know it before it's ever a problem. Did you know that? Or has someone making or passing around something like that ever happened with you or your friends? Always putting it on the friends. Kids are more likely to say, like, oh yeah, asking for a friend.
Right.
But this article is great about having conversations with teens. It's sort of directed at parents, but just as relevant for anybody working in middle schools and high schools that needs to be ready to have these conversations and wants to have these conversations in class or outside of class.
And shout out to Jenny Radeski, who is one of the folks associated with Common Sense Media, for sharing that on LinkedIn. Really appreciate that good work. All right, Liz, students convened to hammer out an AI Bill of Rights for schools. This is from the 74. Greg Topo, over 100 high school students representing 15 states gathered at the Edward M. Kennedy Institute in Boston to draft and vote on a national AI Bill of Rights organized as part of the Day of AI. So basically, a superintendent from each state and then 2 students joined that superintendent, including there were 2 representatives that were quoted a little bit in the 74 article from Connecticut. So the idea here is that we haven't seen aggressive federal legislation around this area, and so a group of students came together to fill that gap. Students approved a set of recommendations advocating for early mandatory AI literacy, responsible brainstorming, stronger safeguards. So basically, what can students, parents, they were pretty clear to mark out each cohort. So what can students do and can't do? What can parents do and can't do, as well as teachers? Jeff Riley, who is the former commissioner of DESE, the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education, where I live, spearheaded this effort. He said, "I can almost guarantee you right now, American school children 15 years and older are going to score 30th in the world on AI literacy on a technology that was largely created in this country." He's pointing out that we may be coming from a little bit behind here. I mean, I think you could look at a lot of the state level AI policy documents, and maybe that informed some of their thinking. I had a couple concerns about a few things I just want to mention. Yeah, I love the fact that they said, look, if you're 13 or you're older than 13 and you're using these AI tools, because that would, comply with many state and federal laws, that there should be an AI literacy experience. We've had a couple districts that are implementing our AI literacy curriculum, and the curriculum is basically a precursor to giving them access to Gemini or Notebook LM or whatever the tool is that they're using, although typically it's one of those two or both. So I thought that was great. They covered, as you said, all the bases on plagiarism, misinformation. They dealt with bias, data privacy. They probably more than state level guidance that we've seen called out some focus on the environment. It seemed very thoughtful and comprehensive. There are a couple places that just caught my attention. I was like kind of going through. So there's a line there that says students should never use AI for the act of writing, although outlining, brainstorming, etc., is okay after 8th grade. And I don't know, right? I mean, if you go back to the AI assessment scale and Leon Furs, like outlining and brainstorming would be level 3 of 5 levels, right? The next level would be, kind of writing with AI. And then the final level would be more like using AI as a capstone project to do real world problem solving. So I think we've worked with many teachers who are having students write with AI and then handing in the chat transcripts, assessing that, working on them. It doesn't mean like write with AI all the time, but I don't know. It caught me in a funny way. Also, there's a line in there about you can never use AI in doing artwork. I mean, I get the spirit of that, but 100%, if you're going to work in the field of digital arts, you 100% have to know how to use AI as a companion tool in that process. So I get why, right? But I think, sometimes when we write these as this kind of like binary thing, it's a little bit tricky. Also, there's a line about you can never upload an assignment into AI. I think there's all sorts of use cases where uploading an assignment, for the purpose of coaching and training, we're going to have this great conversation with a student who is essentially doing that in his school in India and some other schools as well in just a couple minutes. So yeah, just some areas where, look, I'll be super careful here. And we're about to start this whole series of interviews with students. So we'll want to be thoughtful about this. But sometimes I've seen students be more conservative than the teachers are in their buildings, right? I've worked with groups of students who have come in to work on AI policy and they're like, oh no, our friends are always cheating all the time. So they take a kind of more aggressive clamp down view. So, hey, look, if you're a younger listener, and email us at chatedu@edadvance.org and tell me all the reasons I'm wrong. The other thing I thought was interesting, and look, it's not their job to cover every bit of the landscape, but I'd love to see something in there about a real endorsement of using AI for problem solving, for capstone projects, for PIP projects, for learning they'll love, right? Like, how do we really get behind the idea of students using AI to solve the generational problems? Because we have covered a multitude of examples, and we're going to continue to do that. I would love to see some emphasis there, and also the idea of like students at upper level STEM classes in chem, in bio, really using more advanced forms of AI. So very like down the middle, dealing with AI plagiarism, but it'd just be interesting to widen the view just a little bit. That's my I will now get off my soapbox, but Jeff Riley and or any of the students, I think we've hoped at some point, I think we know a couple superintendents who were involved in that. It'd be really fun because it was clear, by the way, when you read the 74, like not all the kids agreed. There was a lot of dissent in those dialogues. And so it'd be interesting to get like a little bit more flavor about the rebuttals, the arguments, and the debate that went on there, including from former DESE Commissioner Jeff Riley as well.
I think this could be used, like now that we have this bill or this actual document that has been created by a representative group of people across the country, like this would be so cool to, even as a social studies civics teacher, to like look at this and then say like, here's what your colleagues, your peers came up with, and like pick that apart as lessons in civics. Just last week, we covered the story about how the student was calling for kids to understand more about how to be part of the legislative process. Like this was part of it. So now taking this and asking kids, like, what would you say back? Where would you have fit in? What do you want to rebut or agree with?
All right, Liz, let's go beneath the surface with Avier Ratti from Refine Technologies. You are going to love this.
It's such a great story.
Okay, great. This is really exciting. So this is the first of a series of conversations that we've been teasing for a while, where we're just completely psyched to talk to students who are doing innovative work with AI. And I can't think of a more fantastic way to start than here. I'm being joined by Avier Ratti, who is a young man in India and saw a problem. I think, Avier, you reached out to me and said, hey, I wanted to share something, right? So let's just jump in. Like, tell us, who are you? How old are you, if you don't mind? Because I think the audience is going to be interested to hear that. And then what'd you build and who's it for?
Right. So my name's Avyay Rathi. I'm from Pune in India, and I'm turning 15 soon. And so I've built Refine Technologies along with a few friends of mine. I'll just name them: Govind, Nayan, Agastya, Rohin, and Arjun Davre. Um, basically, what Refine is that it's an ethical learning platform which is designed to help students and teachers work in a more tailored manner, meaning like they have everything's optimized for them and it's to their needs and it's done in an ethical manner. So AI, which is used to help people rather than for cheating in school environments, which is a
Yeah.
large problem, at least in India.
Yeah, I guess I was curious about that. So, do you remember the moment where you said, "This is a problem I want to solve"? I mean, do you remember who you were with and where you were, literally?
Yeah, so I think it was seventh grade, and we were sitting in class, and it was just me and a few other friends that time who were the founding members, and we were sort of just sitting in the back of the class. We were done with our test, and then we were just looking in front, and there were like five people using ChatGPT, and then we're like, okay, yeah, this is a problem. We have to do something about it, and then that's how this whole idea started to like sort of come out.
Okay, interesting. And how long did it take from that moment to when you had a product that you thought you could use?
So we've made like eight different type of products before we reached here to this
Okay.
final version. We tried out all kinds of things, but I think for the current model which we're using, it took us a year and a half to come out with the first prototype of that. But our first model ever, like maybe like 7 months.
Okay. Now, you described this to me before. I was excited to have a chance to chat with you once before. And it sounds like the way let's have you describe it. So I'm a student. How do I suddenly come across your application? I'm in school and maybe I go to ChatGPT to find something and then I think suddenly you are there. Is that right?
Right. So, how I would refer to this is like a man in the middle. So, it's a network level filter which we have. So, what it does is that it uses a few technologies to sort of intercept the packets when a student is on the school network and they put in a prompt from any AI system. So, let it be ChatGPT, it could be Gemini, it could be anything. And then our APIE, which is the artificial prompt integrity engine, what it does is that it classifies the prompt as either ethical or unethical, and
Oh,
this is based on our training data, which is I think around 100,000 prompts, and
okay.
then it classifies this, and if it's classified as unethical, it sort of gets pushed to an LLM, and it's rewritten to make it like a step by step learning prompt. So if I ask it solve, let's just say 2 plus 2, it's not going to give me that. It's going to teach me how to do simple addition, and it's going to tailor it to how it's understood how I learn. So and then it just gives the answer back or the prompt back to whichever LLM you're talking to, like ChatGPT again, and you get the answer.
What's an ethical example where you say, okay, we're going to let that one go by?
All right, so maybe it could be explain to me how photosynthesis works. So
Okay.
that's gonna slide.
Yeah, yeah. So interesting. Wait, do you get like, razzed? I don't know if you guys say that word, but by your friends in the hallway because they wanted to use AI in an unethical way. And all of a sudden, your man in the middle system jumped in and turned into a tutor for them.
Right. So with like the whole system, I think, yeah, to some extent, a few people. But then I think initially when it was only this and it was only blocking and like rewriting the prompts, and we weren't giving any features which were benefiting the students per se, like
Yeah.
directly. That time, I don't think they were very happy with us at all. But then when we added like quite a few tools to help the students develop themselves, uh, like our learning paths and courses, etc., I think then they became quite happy with it, and I think they started using it more.
Because they're using it for test preparation, for IB,
Right,
right? A number of things that are useful to them.
right.
What do you think is their favorite?
Statistically, they like using the learning paths for IB specifically, and
Hmm.
specifically for grades 9 and 10.
Okay, interesting. Now, listen, we both know that AI is often fallible. It makes things up. It hallucinates. What's an example where AI didn't deliver what you were anticipating it would deliver as you were working with this, and how did you work around that problem?
All right. So in India, in at least in Maharashtra, it's compulsory to do a local language. So Marathi is the language we speak here,
Hmm.
and since it's a very underserved language to the LLMs, there's very little data which is there, or very little scripts. So when somebody is prompting the AI to teach it something in that language or about that language, a lot of times it hallucinates. It talks in a wrong grammatical format. It gives some wrong information. It says something which it's not supposed to say at all. Sometimes it bypasses our prompt integrity engine, but we're avidly working on that to sort of keep it up to date.
How are you trying to do that? Are you training kind of like a custom version of the model with the language, or?
So that's exactly what we're doing. So we have this framework called the CAT framework, which we've developed. And what it sort of does is that it uses the cultural anchors, and it uses something called Akshara Fusion to increase the accuracy from around 50% to 94%.
Now, is that something you learned by exploring with AI, or is this an innovation that you guys have uniquely developed?
This is an innovation which we've uniquely developed. I think it took like 6 months to develop this certain framework. And I think it's something which has been very useful for a lot of students, especially in underserved areas who want to use our product.
Is that something you wind up trying to put a patent on, or protect the intellectual property of your work in some way, or is it just part of building the product?
Right. So everything is in our intellectual property patent, which is filed. We're just waiting for it to come back.
Wow. So you guys are just remarkable what you're doing. I think I have a sense of this, but I mean, could you have done this project pre-fall 2022? I think you would have been in fifth grade, but no, I'm just teasing. Well, maybe close, but has AI been the lever that's allowed you to do this? Are you using AI assisted coding as AI problem solving tool for you? Or do you think, short of the fact that it is an AI product for the learner, like how much has AI been a lever for you guys to do what you're doing?
So when we first started this, I think for the data collection and all, that was all human done. And I think except for the UI, like the backend is all coded manually to avoid
Hmm.
any errors or hallucinations or gaps in the code. Because I think at least myself and two of my co-founders, technical co-founders, we're very proficient in multiple languages of code, and
Hmm.
we compete on a national level for coding in India. And I think we're able to code the back end, but none of us are very good at the front end. So we sort
Hmm.
of pipe code it. That's why the front end does not look as sharp as the back end. But we're honing our skills to sort of reach there.
So you're not happy with AI's vibe coding the front end. And for listeners who aren't so super familiar with this is basically the layer that you see that you click through, you navigate. We call it like the GUI. So you're not as happy with the front end vibe coding tools as you are with what you can hard code yourself in the back.
Yeah, I think for sure we're not as happy with what Job AI has been doing for our front end.
Okay, I like that critical lens. Now you said you have two technical co-founders. So does that mean that tell us about the other roles? Like what you got a an okay sized team to start. Some of you are more technical. What are the other like core competencies of other members of your team to get this done?
We have three technical co-founders, as I said, and then we have two people working on the marketing end, so
Hmm.
reaching out to schools for pilots and handling our social media, which is it's on Instagram. And then we have one member who's just doing the budgeting for us to make sure that we're like in the budget which we receive from various competitions, we're not overspending in the pilots, etc. And then we have just a few members who just do some ideation, etc., and help us out. Like they debug, they test out.
And do you guys do like stand up meetings on a regular basis and people report on the different job functions and roles that they have? Or how do you organize yourselves?
Right. So we split it into two groups. So we have all the members who are not working on the code, members who are working on the code. We have bi-weekly meetings, like as a team, the whole team, everybody together, and then weekly meetings within our groups.
So, Javier, has this changed your perception of what you can accomplish? I mean, it seems like you've been doing competitions for a while. You've obviously been a strong student, but has getting this product, we talked before, you have a couple pilots, you have quite a few numbers of students and also teachers that come back and use the tool, refined technologies on a regular basis. Is this changing your own perception of like what you can accomplish with your skills?
Yeah, I think definitely. I think what coding and whatever experience I've gained from this, it's given me confidence. Like even with all the competitions or Olympiads which I take part in, I would not have had the confidence if I had not like actually sat down for years and coded this and ideated. And I think it just gave me a lot of real life skills because it's not everything's not black and white here. It's there's a lot of
Mm.
gray area because we have to explore and invent things ourselves. We're not doing things which are done before as such. And like especially when we started off that time, this was like unheard of as sorts. Now there are a few competitors who've come out recently in the last few months or maybe year or so, but I think it's given me a lot of confidence and a lot of skills to gain.
So it's a different thing than being a very proficient coder, than working on a challenge or being really an entrepreneur, working on a team, bringing something to market, collaborating, finding the purpose, the product market fit, all that. Yeah, they're super interesting. What do you want to do? I mean, I know you're a young man, you're just about to turn 15, but as you think about college, as you think about future careers, what's kind of in your mind's eye of where you want to go?
I'm a sophomore right now, so uh rising sophomore. So I've been thinking a bit. I've not put too much thought into it, but for me, I'm gonna try, of course, for the IITs, which are very prestigious in India, but it's like also extremely hard to get in. So depending on how I do in the entrance exams for that, and then obviously I'll apply to a few places outside of India like NUS, etc.
We have a lot of listeners in the U.S. and anywhere in the U.S. that catches your attention. Cal State. You want to be in?
My dad went to Georgia Tech, so
Okay,
that's always in mind.
that's great. Hey, let's beyond the technical skills. What do you think if you forget coding for a second, or even front end UI? What do you think are the most important skills as a person that you've developed as you've been working on these projects?
Patience.
Oh yeah, say more.
I think throughout the entire experience, we've had like so many issues, so many times where like nothing was happening, and I was just like, I had to stay calm and just like continue and like persevere through everything. And like so many times when we were trying to like make a certain product, it just wasn't working. Like we spent like a month or two on it, and then like we realized that there's some issue and we can't do it. We just have to scrap the whole thing. So it took a lot. It helped me develop a lot of patience and like a sense of like being calm in like a setting as such.
Were there ever times you thought you might want to quit and just give up?
Well, like maybe like once after like the first model which we ever made when that didn't work out. But then like we thought it's like this is too big of a problem to not solve. And I
Ah.
think our previous mentor from my previous school really convinced us or like helped us to remain focused.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned a mentor because that was something I was curious about. What have the adults around you, your family, educators, but like what have the adults around you done that has been helpful, if anything, to you? You've had a mentor. So beyond that, what have other adults done that's been helpful to kind of support you in your work?
So our mentor was kind of our school teacher who sort of just was supervising us for competitions, etc. More so than like giving advice on the actual product. Then we have our incubator which we are got pre-incubated in called Lemon Ideas. So I think
Hmm.
they helped us develop the business side of the model, and they also gave us quite a bit of funding for the pilots after their ideathon which was held, so entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
I think my parents and my friends parents have all like been supporting us throughout the way. Whenever we've had to do something or go to some meeting or do anything, they've always supported us and uh, given us advice and helped us with our pitches, etc.
Nice. If a teacher was listening to this and, what advice would you give to a teacher, let's say here in the United States, like I'm in Massachusetts. So take a random teacher in Massachusetts. Uh, what advice would you give them if they want to help students do this kind of work?
I think that if students are given like a free opportunity to learn design thinking process, that's
Yeah.
very crucial. I think my previous school was a trendsetter in India, and they started teaching design thinking process to us from like a very young age. And I think that sense of innovation which was imbibed into all of us or taught to us gave us like a unique skill set which a lot of kids don't have, and I think it's a very crucial skill to learn to be innovative and creative and to actually be given an opportunity to put your like thoughts into action. And I think that's a very good like a very crucial opportunity for growth in students. So I think that's something.
So that's nice. So you were in a whole school setting that nurtured that. You're in a different school now. I mean, are you a small minority in terms of students that are doing this kind of work, or do you have many peers who are working on other projects, or are you guys kind of a unique breed here?
I think in my current, which is my high school now, there are fewer people who are working on projects as such. There are some for sure. There may be a few in every grade, but not too many, not as compared to my previous school.
And I think you would share with me that ultimately, as you think about colleges in India, a lot of it comes down to test scores, right? So if you apply to colleges in India, I'm sure your dad hopes you go to Georgia Tech, but will this project and the work that you're doing matter in your college application in terms of in India?
Yeah, there is a certain quota which they have for business programs specifically. If you do well enough with your startup,
Hmm.
they give that recognition. But if it doesn't reach like a certain scale, I'm not sure what the scale is, it changes every year, but it shouldn't be too beneficial to applications, no.
Because your scores ultimately become
Yeah.
the most significant metric. Yeah. Okay. And is it your sense that's true in the United States, or do you think this type of a challenge and project and entrepreneurship will have a different value in an application to a US college?
Well, from what I've understood, I think the international colleges generally, other than the ones in Asia, are look at it in a more holistic way. They look at like your extracurriculars, supercurriculars, and all of that. So I think it should help more than it would in India for sure, but I don't know to what extent.
Huh. I like that term. I don't. So you said extracurricular and supercurricular. Is that right?
Yeah.
Tell me about supercurricular. How do you understand those two terms?
So supercurriculars, from what I understand, are extracurriculars in your major, which you want to apply for, and then they're like to an international or national scale. Whereas extracurriculars could be like anything.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Makes sense. There's so much talk about AI in your generation. I'm curious if AI were to disappear tomorrow, do you think it would affect, how would it affect you?
Yeah, I think it would majorly affect me. I think I utilize AI for almost all of my test preparations, more than anything, and I think it's a like vital part of my at least my academics, if not anything else. And it also just helps me to like hone my skills for like coding, etc. And I think AI is very crucial. I don't want it to disappear.
Okay, well, I don't think it will, so that's the good news. It's funny though that you say it's sort of vital to you because before you had mentioned, oh, it's not really helpful for us in coding, right? Because you've got that skill and competence, but it's helpful to you as a learning tool. So if you were one of your peers, don't worry, no one's listening at all. This is a secret between you and me. If you were one of your peers and you were on your school's network and you put in a prompt to learn something, would your system let you pass through to a large language model of choice because you were trying to use it as a learning tool? Or would it do the man in the middle attack and drop you into your own tool as a turn into a tutor for you?
If I like depends on what the prompt is. If I want to learn something, well, 8% of the time it might jump in. 92% of the time, statistically, it shouldn't
Yeah.
jump in. I should be able to access the LLM.
Okay. Okay. Perfect. Excellent. Well, really such a pleasure to chat with you. We're going to grab the Instagram account, your link, and the names of your team members. I'm sure they may be a little bit jealous that you're, kind of the rock star of this conversation, but we'll look forward to sharing everybody's work and the work that you're doing. And please keep in touch. Let us know how things progress. Is there a next competition that you're on the precipice of that's coming up in the fall or?
Yeah, so we were alternate finalists for the Conrad Challenge last year. So we're hoping
Okay.
to qualify for the conference in Houston for the following year. Yeah.
Okay. Well, please let us know how that works out. Is there anything we didn't discuss that you want to mention?
No, not really. I think we discussed a lot of the aspects and about the journey, etc.
Fantastic, Javier. Well, just brilliant young man and keep up the great work. And thank you so much for reaching out. And thank you for being part of the conversation we're having with educators around the globe about the value of participating in these kinds of challenges, especially where AI is an instrumental part of the work. Yeah, fantastic.
Thank you so much for this opportunity.
All right, Liz, good one, as promised. More to come. I know you're interviewing Charlie Hughes in a couple of weeks. And so, as we shared, there'll be many more of these kind of conversations with students, and we'll try to unpack some themes around that. But now it is time for our Bright Bite, a story where AI is being used in meaningful ways to contribute to health, wellness, society, and really, in this case, empowering someone's life in the most dramatic way.
This is such a good one. I mean, they're all good, but the title of this one is Brain Implant Helps Paralyzed Man to Feed Himself and Drink from Cup. This is from The Guardian author Ian Sample. So, researchers at the Feinstein Institutes for Medical Research successfully utilized a brain-computer interface system called a double neural bypass to restore movement and tactile sensation to Keith Thomas, a New York man paralyzed from the chest down. The technology detects movement intent from brain electrodes, routes signals to move the arms, and sends touch feedback back to the brain. So, remarkably, the therapy promoted lasting neural rewiring, allowing Thomas to regain partial strength and touch sensation even when the system is turned off. And so, Professor Chad Booten says, for years, we have been wanting to really tackle the restoration and movement and the sense of touch and bring those together. And we've also wanted to create lasting effects. So, I mean, the science behind all of this is so far beyond me. Double neural bypass systems, not something I'm super familiar with. But what I do know is that people that are paralyzed and being able to get sensation back, feed themselves, to have feeling and movement back is amazing.
Excellent, Liz. Well, I will look forward to seeing you in the studio. Have a great time fiber artsing it up. We're all on the collective edges of our seat to hear how it goes. So we will see you soon. And it now must be time to
roll the credits.
Okay.
As always, we'd love to hear what you think. So please let us know at chatedu@edadvance.org. That's EDADVANCE.org. And also rate, review, and subscribe to the podcast on whatever platform you are using. Chat EDU is brought to you by EdAdvance, the nonprofit regional education service center in Litchfield, Connecticut. This episode of Chat EDU is sponsored by the National Center for Next Generation Manufacturing. Chat EDU is recorded, edited, and produced by Andre Angelo and Justin Pasco, whose dedication and expertise bring our discussions to life. Chat EDU's executive producer is the multi-talented rock star Cameron Audia. Additionally, we are grateful for the support of our colleague Gary Robinson, and we appreciate his time and talents. And of course, a big Chat EDU shout out to our fearless leader and executive director, Jonathan Costa, for inspiring the pod. And finally, a heartfelt thank you to our listeners for joining us on this journey exploring the thoughtful and innovative integration of AI in education.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jonathan Costa, and I am the executive director at EdAdvance, and I want you to know how much we appreciate our listeners. If you enjoy the podcast, feel free to explore EdAdvance's other AI services, which include customized professional learning of all kinds, conferences, our new middle and high school student AI literacy course, and our educator and leader micro-credential, co-sponsored by the Southern Connecticut State University Office of Workforce and Lifelong Learning. Just visit skills21.org/AI to learn more. That's all for now, and thank you for listening to Chat EDU.